You guys already know what I'm thinking when there's new Dragon Ball content to be done for handhelds. Alright! Nintendo Switch fans around since basically the beginning will probably remember how people treated Dragon Ball Xenoverse 2 when it first came out. Even a lot of reviewers were basically crapping on it because it's not Dragon Ball FighterZ. Well, I hope you guys are happy now because we haven't. It took a while for them to optimize it, but it was worth the wait. Without further ado, here is my review of Dragon Ball FighterZ for the Nintendo Switch. FighterZ takes place in the anime timeline sometime between the events of the Resurrection and future arcs of Dragon Ball Super. A worldwide crisis happens when energy-sapping waves cover the planet, rendering all of the Z Fighters useless, and an army of Goku clones appears around the world, wreaking havoc and taking advantage of this energy-sapping crisis. In the middle of all of this, Goku becomes possessed by a strange human spirit that seems to be the only entity capable of drawing out his power to fight. So he embarks on a journey with this spirit in tow to collect all of his friends, bring out their powers, and put a stop to the crisis. Now the story I won't say is bad, but I won't say it's great either. It definitely has some really good parts, but it also has a couple really bad parts. First of all, the story goes way too far out of the way to explain the gameplay mechanics. The whole soul possession thing is probably 15, 20, or even 30 minutes of just, this is why you can play as multiple characters. It would have been a much better written story if the whole soul possession thing was off the table and it was just everyone lost their powers, so now you're on equal footing with the enemies. And the other I'll be brief about because it's about the antagonist. To be as spoiler free as I can, having an original antagonist in a Dragon Ball game is really great and fun, but not when the antagonist is basically just a collection of fetishes. When you feel like you're watching a softcore fetish porn video, every time the villain shows up, it feels less like an official Dragon Ball game and more like something you found on fanfiction.net's more not safe for work section. As I said though, some of the story is really good, and that comes from the character-to-character interactions. If you have certain characters in your party at the same time, you'll get special pre-battle cutscenes where they'll interact with each other in very funny and what-if ways, such as Goku and Gohan debating fusing together into a new warrior, to more funny what-if scenarios of Cell or Frieza interacting with Majin Buu. If you like Dragon Ball fan service, you will absolutely love all of these little scenes. Now, with gameplay in mind, Dragon Ball FighterZ is a 2D fighting game with some light RPG elements thrown into its story mode. The main difference between this version of FighterZ and the other versions is the fact that the Switch has some more local multiplayer options like 6-player offline party matches, but more importantly, pre-orders got a Switch port of Dragon Ball Z Super Butoden, the very first Dragon Ball fighting game ever made. Now when you go into the game, you go into a lobby like you do in Xenoverse. You can either go into an offline lobby to do things in single player, or you can go into the online lobby where you have more game modes and more customization shops to choose from. Now when it comes to game modes, you've got a few things to choose from. You've got story mode where you can play through 3 different campaigns in a very Budokai 2-like grid, where you make custom parties, level up as you fight, and equip skills to help you along. Not to mention unlocking all of those special cutscenes that I mentioned in the story section. And then you've got local battle where you can make custom matches against the AI, a typical gauntlet style arcade mode, and finally practice mode that has a lot of tutorials including extensive combo tutorials for all of the playable characters, DLC included. Now when you get into multiplayer, there's some variety here as well. You've got World Match, where you can just take your team to take on opponents in PvP, Arena Match, where you can match up for PvP with others in the same lobby, and my personal favorite, Party Match. In Party Matches, you have 6 players in one match, each only controlling one character, giving a little bit of strategy and a little bit of variety in the fact that you never know when someone's going to tag you in and you'll have to take over and fight. You've also got some more minor game modes like the Replay Theater and Z-Union, where you can basically be a fan club of a certain character and get rewards over time. But let's get out of game modes and get right into the meat and best part about this game, the combat. I compare this game mostly to the Marvel vs. Capcom games. You've got 3 character parties, but only one character is on the 2D plane at once, letting you do a lot of assist attacks for your other characters coming in and doing either attacks or actually replacing you and doing an attack on the enemy at the same time. Also, like Marvel vs. Capcom, the combo system is pretty simple. You have basic attacks that you use with the action buttons and sometimes the R triggers, and you can do different skills by doing simple D-pad or arrow button inputs along with those face buttons. It's also pretty rewarding because combos are easy to block, but once you get one going, the opponent is stuck in that combo until you're finished with it. And just to throw it out there, if you're not a fan of using D-pad inputs with the Joy-Cons, there's also a simple control scheme where you can do those special skills with the triggers that makes it far easier, because as much as I've played the game, it's a lot harder to play with the Joy-Cons. As fun as the combat is, the spectacle of the combat is really the greatest feature, at least in my opinion. Every move, every super attack, every cinematic ultimate is something taken out of the anime franchise for every character. Even something as simple as a regular normal attack punch is something that replicates the anime. With how this works, and with how cinematic every ultimate is, it looks like you're watching an anime. Which is a big reason why in my review of the beta, I said I enjoyed spectating just as much as I did fighting because it's such a joy to watch. Now all of this does come together pretty well. You've got plenty to do in single player and you've got a really fun combat system for multiplayer. But let's talk time, because this is a $60 game, so outside of playing Super Butoden, how much time are you going to get out of the single player content here? After I had played the intro, all of the basic tutorials, a couple runs through arcade mode, and some pretty patient runs through the 3 story campaigns, I logged around 17 to 18 hours. Now you can go back through story mode on hard mode and unlock all of the special story scenes, but I'd say there's probably only about 18 to 20 hours of single player content here. Now let's talk presentation, which is one of the greatest parts about this game. Just like in the beta, when you have this in docked mode, it's basically flawless and the cell shading is so in-depth that it looks like you're watching an anime and not a video game. Now there are a few jagged edges here and there when you've got it in handheld mode, but it's not really that noticeable when you've got action going on the screen. Now performance is very good as well. In offline and single player mode, you've got a perfect 60 frames per second. The only times I ever really saw lag in the game was during multiplayer matches, which varied from match to match. Some matches with locals, I would have a perfect frame rate, and some matches I would have a lot of lag. Now let's touch on battery life, which is a little bit weird here. Mostly because the beta for this game has more battery life than the full game does. But let's go into the specifics. Dragon Ball FighterZ, the full game, has a battery range of 2 hours and 10 minutes on higher settings, up to 3 hours and 2 minutes on lower settings. I've definitely seen worse here, it's just odd that it's different from the beta. Now in conclusion, Dragon Ball FighterZ is a great 2D fighting game with fun and rewarding gameplay, beautiful visuals, and a lot of fan service for Dragon Ball fans. The only really bad parts about the game are the story aspects that I mentioned back in the story section. So if you want a 2D fighter for multiplayer, this is a great choice. But if you're a Dragon Ball fan wanting a lot of single player content, you're probably better off with Xenoverse 2. Reviews to Go rates Dragon Ball FighterZ for the Nintendo Switch a 9 out of 10. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to leave them below or head to the site at reviewstogo.com. Before I go, I just want to take a moment to thank all of my donators and patrons. I appreciate and use all donations that I receive to further both the quantity and quality of the content here on Reviews to Go. Thank you very much, and if any of you would like to donate, head over to patreon.com/reviewstogo, or if you'd rather do a one-time donation, head over to paypal.me/reviewstogo. Thanks again for watching the review. Have a great day.